Hey, I'm Lee Kasumba, and this is our journey across Africa, navigating the intricate landscapes of business, culture, and global influence from the African perspective.
The Africa Whisperer, telling authentic African stories in a global way.
On this episode of The Africa Whisperer,
everybody that was coming there was like, oh wow, this is beautiful. We never knew about this type of cuisine. It's fantastic. It's so tasty. So, and it was really amazing to see how all of a sudden the world is ready for African cuisine. But it's ready because there are chefs who took this, this challenge on exposing the African cuisine.
Food is never just food. It's about identity. It reflects our culture. It can transport us to a different country without ever stepping on a plane. And like my guest Chef Coco said it, show me your plate and I'll tell you who you are. Chef Coco is a Pan-Africanist, a culinary storyteller, an entrepreneur, and a proponent for African cuisine. Whether he's curating dishes for some of the top CEOs in Africa, hosting a food hall in Dubai, or preparing meals for heads of state, opening a world-class sports cafe in Kigali, Rwanda in association with Basketball Africa, or walking through the streets of Chad to find authentic local food, or even hosting international stars like Steve Harvey at his restaurant, he's always pushing the beauty, the flavors, the stories of African cuisine. Now, Chef Coco, let's get into this conversation around food and Africa. As Africans, food is a huge thing. People's marriages can break up over food. Somebody can decide who they're going to marry because the mother will be like, we should be able to cook food from my country.
Yep.
What will our children eat? It's such a huge thing. Some cultures will go anywhere in the world. I know my Nigerian friends, they mustn't get upset. Anywhere they go, they must have Nigerian food. So
yep.
In some places, it's so deep. So, when I think about food, and I think it's possibly the same for you, as Africans, it reminds us about our home, our identity, and it also tells stories about our cultures and our families and us as individuals. I'm not so familiar about food in Burundi and in Congo, and you being from Burundi and Congo, can you describe the type of foods that are popular and how people engage with food in these two different countries?
The food of Burundi depends, it's very simple, I would say. Depend a lot on where you are. It's a very small country, so whether you are around the lake, it will be mainly fish-based. Okay, but once you are in the mountains, it will be mainly plant-based and some meat from time to time. No, Burundi, we are, how can I say, cattle people, can you say that? So we milk, dairy, some local cheese that we do. That's really what we eat the most.
Yes.
And from Congo, for me, Congo have one of the most beautiful and diverse food genres all together from the continent, because you have actually everything. You have seafood, you have fishes, you have freshwater fish, you have game, you have any type of bird, you have different type of cooking from whether you are in the north of Congo, you are in the east of Congo, southern Congo. So it's really very, very diverse type of food. And it's one of the, I would say, most elaborate food culture you can find in Africa.
I love that because my experience of Congo is through my uncles and my dad and all of that. Because, coming from Uganda, I know that anything Congolese was popular. People were dancing like Congolese people and everything. And even when you think about Congo now, first of all, I believe Congo is one of the biggest countries in Africa, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of population and size. And then the fact that Congo has the most amount of resources in the world, I think between Congo and Sierra Leone, the natural resources. So when you describe the food, I'm like, that's so amazing about how diverse the food genre is in Congo. It really is a reflection of the people, of the land, of the resources. I think it's so beautiful how food ties in with how the people are. It's so nice how it really translates into the food and the way that you've described it. So that's really awesome how you can tell a culture from the plate.
So, in Africa, we always say, tell me what you eat, I will tell you who you are.
Wow. Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
you can, as you're talking about Nigerian food, when you eat Nigerian food, you're like, okay, you can almost see the person who's been preparing this. You
Yes.
can feel the energy,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really, really reflects the character of the amazing people of Nigeria into
Yes.
the food they eat.
I love everything about this conversation, just how it's being tied in with people and character. Literally, you can even see it. Like you say, you can see the
Yeah,
people from their food. Now, Chef Coco, what I love about your story, I think it's so beautiful, and your journey as a chef. I feel that you're more than just a chef. You're an entrepreneur, you're a culinary storyteller, you're an ambassador for African food, so many things. What you're doing is phenomenal. But I love the way that everything started for you. This whole idea of a generational culinary love story. You know, your grandfather was a chef and he passed that on to your mom and then passed it on to you. I'm very curious. For you, when you thought about picking up the mantle of becoming a chef, was it kind of like because you felt your mother edging you on?
for me, I've stopped believing that the culinary world was something that I love or that I have passion about. For me, it's beyond passion. I really think it has to be genetic. I don't know how I can prove that, but I need to find maybe one of those
Yeah.
scientists who can explain to me my genes, and then maybe there must be a cooking gene or something like that. Because I've tried other
Yeah.
stuff. When you are a teenager, you're kind of rebellious. First, I wanted to be a DJ, and then I wanted to be
Oh,
an engineer, but everything kept leading me back to what I didn't want or I think was not for me. Because I could see the hard work my mother was putting in, the hours of working that she was putting in. Uh, it's really as a kid, I don't remember a holiday with my mother. I don't
wow.
remember us going on holiday. I remember me going on holiday, so she will leave me and she will leave us, sorry, with my other siblings, go on holiday to an uncle, to an aunt overseas or whatever. But I don't remember going on holiday with her. And I was thinking about this the other day, and yeah, so when I was looking at all that, it's very difficult. It's a tough life, but it is so rewarding that you forget everything else. And when you are passionate or genetically built for that type
Yes.
of world, well, you take everything else differently.
There's a part of your story that I don't know if it was just maybe like almost like you were saying it as a joke, or was it actually serious that your mother almost gave birth to you on the kitchen floor?
Yeah, absolutely. In her kitchen, and
Yes.
I was born in her almost. I mean, pre-born. When I say, I believe the birth process start when you
Yeah.
break water. So that's, I think, is the beginning. So it happened there in the kitchen, and then she had to go and deliver me. After deliver me, I think the next evening or the following day, 2 day after, she was back in her kitchen. And
Wow.
all this you have to understand that it was a very, very young woman. Not, we could even say, not even an adult yet. She was she was working in her father's kitchen, So that's when all this happened, and it was drama at that time.
So now you becoming a chef, and I know that you're very happy about being a father, being a husband, all of that.
And a grandfather, and a grandfather.
And a grandfather, and a grandfather. How are you perhaps incorporating your family, or how do you try to do things a little bit differently?
So it's also the same struggle, but different, if I can say. Now we live in a very, how can I'm not going to say easier life, but we live in a way where, in a world where you can easily, or it's easier to multitask, okay? And the operation that I have is, I will say, a bit bigger than what she had. So she was a one-woman band. She was doing everything, while me here, I'm able to rely on other people. I'm able to start slowly delegate. And although the lifestyle that we have, it's very demanding in terms of hour and dedication, I try to create small family time, but quality time. Okay,
Yes.
almost like we don't see each other every day. Okay, but when we see each other, I try to make sure that I focus on the family 100%. Almost phone off, and trying to really focus on the family. It's not easy. I'm not saying that I'm succeeding every time. It's very difficult, but at least I'm trying.
With regards to your mom took over. I think your family had a hotel in Kinshasa, if you can just correct it.
No, that was in Burundi, and Kinshasa, it was her restaurant where she was doing a mix of African food and European.
So when she passed away, you took over from the restaurant in Kinshasa. At that particular time, where was Congo historically? What was the food like? Was it still what it was now? Because I know obviously Congo went through the whole situation where it was Zaire, then Democratic Republic of Congo. So what era in Congo's history was this when you took over? And what was the atmosphere like, the guests? Just give us a whole texture and taste of it.
Yeah, always. I mean, in Congo, we only dress smart and flamboyant. That's that's who we are. Okay.
Yes.
As far as humanity can remember, Congolese people have always dressed smart and flamboyant. I took over a restaurant in exactly 94 when, fortunately, she passed away, and I still remember she actually passed away on my last day of school, while I was doing my hospitality management diploma in Belgium. So unfortunately, I had to go and take over her restaurant in Kinshasa, which was one of the most beautiful restaurants and most successful restaurants in Kinshasa, where she was serving presidents, ministers, singers, the who's who of Kinshasa had to go and eat at Pilipili. Pilipili, it was such a well-known restaurant that it was really an iconic place. I had the very difficult task to go and take over, which I did, and I believe I did well. I stayed there at Pilipili for almost 6 years. 6 years and then I left Kinshasa in '99 for 5 years. I left Kinshasa in '99, where I went to Ivory Coast.
When you decided to formalize your education as a chef and to really learn, and you went abroad to Belgium, I believe it was, to go to culinary school, and because you already had such a strong sense of the way cooking was done in Africa, so you weren't going there not knowing anything at all and just going there to start studying. You basically learned cooking from your family. How were you able to bring in the things that you'd learned from an African kitchen, from an African chef when you were in Belgium? Was it something that they were open to at that particular school, or was it frowned upon? What was that whole process like?
It was not an easy process, to impose African cuisine in French European cooking school, it was really, I think I'm the first one who say, okay, let me also teach you and show you a little bit of African cuisine, because I always wanted to change the way Africa is seen on so many different aspects. Okay, so when I did this on the culinary school, I remember I did every year. I was doing one African day at the cooking school, and then from there we had now people who were on that school who were from India, from South America. They also kind of start doing their own origin as well, which was really spectacular to see how student we have managed to change the concept of the school.
And now, just with regards to education, that's obviously something that everybody talks about. And I feel that, and I don't know if you agree with me, but in Africa, obviously, when it comes to culture and creativity, we are excellent at that. I don't think anybody culturally and creatively can touch Africa in anything, whether it's fashion, whether it's cooking, whatever it may be, music, all of that. But one of the areas that we do lack is the whole education system and structures being in place. I'm curious, when it comes to the culinary experience in Africa across the board and young people being able to go to school to learn how to cook in an African way, but that's something that's going to be celebrated globally. Do we have that? And are you involved in any projects that are around culinary experiences in Africa and education in Africa?
This is one of my actual, how can I say, battle that I really want to do. I really want to make sure in the next 5 years we start at least in all big cooking school in Africa having a module on African food. We start by there, okay? And then slowly make sure we can start having cooking school which are 100% dedicated to African cuisine. That's really one of the biggest achievements. If I manage to see that in my lifetime, I would say, okay, it's good. You've done well. Now you can go and rest. But until then, we really have to make sure that we leave that to the generation of chefs, of amazing and talented chefs that are coming out of Africa. It's very painful for me to see that all the big cooking school in Africa still teach our young chef how to make a French mushroom sauce, how to cook or how to do the most beautiful sushi. Yet we don't have anything that is given to this talented chef to represent themselves. It doesn't make sense. We are so proud of our music. We are so proud of the way our African arts are coming and are being regarded in the world. How our musicians are excelling in African music. It's really about time that we have the same achievement on the food side, and that can only happen if we as chefs take charge and make sure that we really are delivering high quality and high level stuff.
It makes me think also, when you're in Japan or when you're in anywhere in the world, are they teaching courses on African food?
We only now a little bit starting to learn about the real history of Africa. How great Africa was pre-colonialism. It's only now that we're starting to see the truth coming out. But I remember as a kid, we were taught the story of, in the history classes, it was World War I, World War II. But what about the history of Africa? Only now we're starting to see that in schools.
So how do you go about finding out about different African food cultures?
Yeah.
Do you travel around to different countries? And when you go there, are you going on the streets? Like, how are you experiencing it so that you can bring authentic foods to your eateries and your restaurant for people who are not in that country? How do you make sure that it's authentic?
So all that, it's decision taking. or decision making, rather. Okay, so I've decided a couple of years ago that I need to spend holidays in Africa. Okay, that's one. I have visited almost 40 different African countries, and
Wow.
every time I go in an African country, I make sure I eat local. You understand?
Yes.
It does not make
Yes.
sense for me to go to Chad and eat a pizza. I refuse that. I refuse that. You understand?
Yeah.
And it's almost becoming like a research travel. Every time I do a cooking or exhibition in Africa, I make sure I eat local. Really, really, it have to be. I don't eat in the restaurant, in the hotels where I'm staying, even for breakfast. Okay, and I'm happy that now I see more and more hotels in Africa, even big hotel chains, start having like a local corner. That's really amazing. I'm very happy, and I can see it's a movement that all African we start getting or being more and more proud of our own food culture. So I'm very, very happy to see that. But in the restaurant, if they don't have African restaurant, I make sure I find other place, even if it's a very remote area or something. Yeah, but I make sure I go and eat in African restaurants.
So now I think that this might be where your concept of News Africa, I think it's related to this and you're traveling. Can you maybe expand on what that is and what you're achieving with that particular concept and project?
So the whole concept we've created at Epicure, it's not just a restaurant where you go and feel proud to be African. It's really, I wanted to make sure we create a very high-end product that can be copy and paste in all African big cities, in places like Dubai, New York, Paris, London. You understand, where all African will be proud to be there. That's number one. Secondly, I wanted to make sure that the food is not just a starter, a main course, and a dessert or something like that. No. I like to offer food journeys. Okay, it's a story. We almost telling the story of a region through a plate. Unfortunately, as African, we don't visit Africa enough. It's happening more and more, which is great, but we sometimes don't even know what is the food culture in the country next door, simply because maybe we never been to the country next door. That was the whole concept of Epicure, and I was calling it the news of African. So I will give you the news of Africa, and news will be standing for north, east, west, south. Nice. So I'm taking you through all that area, and then Central Africa as well will be included in that.
Now, when it comes to food and culture in Africa, one thing is that we're very protective over it. We remember the Jollof Wars that were very highly publicized, went as far as CNN.
Yeah.
So when it comes to what it is that you're trying to do, because there's two things that I would like to discuss. Firstly, you describe the food that you create as modern African food. Have you experienced any pushback or challenges, and how would you describe modern African food? How do you explain that to somebody who perhaps is a purist and they said, no, there's no such thing as modern African food. African food is African food.
Absolutely.
So how do you get around that? I'm sure you've had those kind of discussions with people.
Yeah, all the time, and which is good because we're creating conversation, and conversation is always good, whether it's heated or not. Okay, so my whole concept is, how do we teach someone from Japan to eat African food? Okay, the same way they taught us how we can eat sushi. How do we eat Italian food? Okay, and how can we also have Italian people eating our food? Only by making it appealing to the eyes, you can get that. It's like someone who did not grow up eating mhudu or tripe. You cannot just at 40 or 30 start now discovering tripe and find it great. It's those type of food that really, take you back to your childhood. It's the memories, etc. So my whole, how can I say, exercise was I need to make African food appealing. I need to make African food served in a beautiful plate and in a beautiful manner, the way we were doing at Epicure. Okay, and that's what I call modern. Modern, I will not touch all the flavor and the taste. It's just on the look. And maybe, that's the most important. Like, for example, we used to do every day there was Independent Day, let's say, of Senegal. Then we have a special menu on that day around food from Senegal. Also to teach our fellow African who are visiting, and non-African, by the way, who are visiting Epicure, a little bit about Senegal. So we used to do the menu of Senegal. So we'll try to invite the ambassador of the country to come and, also be part of that festivity. So I remember one day, so it was Senegal Independence Day. We invite the ambassador of Senegal. She arrived. We start serving the food. And it was a Tchéboudienne. Tchéboudienne is what you can say it's the original type of jollof. Okay? Because, by the way, jollof come from Senegal, from the town of Jollof. Not, so Ghanaian and Nigerian fighting over jollof. They must stop copying and create their own. I love teasing them like that. But so she come there, we do the Tchéboudienne, and when the dish arrived, she was like, but this doesn't look like Tchéboudienne. I'm like, okay, great. This is exactly what I wanted. I said, okay, just try and eat it. And when she's trying to eat it, I could see slowly the smile coming on her face. She's like, wow, it's going to be very difficult for me to say this, but it tastes like one of the best Tchéboudienne I've ever had. You understand? That's the type of conversation I want to have. Traditional plating or type of food have to exist, have to continue, but in the same way, we need to evolve. Humanity is a constant evolution in language, in art, in the way you dress, the way you talk. You understand? All that there is an evolution. So we cannot say, us as African, we have to be the only one in the world that are going to remain in the time of our ancestor. It's not possible. We have to evolve with the rest of the world. So that's how I want to elevate, to be, to be part of the new vision of the African food genre.
I know that you've been part of a lot of great international opportunities. You've been in front of really powerful people, even in Africa. I think the CEO, Africa Investment Forum, and so forth. And also you were part of the first African food dining hall in Dubai. A big question that I always feel when it comes to the creative sector in Africa in general, I feel as though creative and cultural sector and so forth, there isn't enough government investment in our own creative, but I don't know how this translates into the culinary world. When you sit at tables with these people, or when you prepare for really important people, presidents and all of that kind of thing, or people who have influence to be able to invest even from the private sector into the culinary world in Africa, do you find that that people are starting to see, look, it's a huge opportunity to create jobs? We can train people. We can use this as food can become part of brand Africa globally. Are you finding that this is happening, or how far are we from that kind of conversation?
No, it's really start happening. It's happening more and more. Like, for example, you are mentioning the Africa CEO Forum, okay? And I went and talked with the organizer. I'm like, guys, what is wrong with you guys? You've been talking here the whole day about how proud you are to be doing business in Africa, what you can change in Africa, how Africa is the place to be, to do business and whatever. And I see at your lunch, you eating Thai cuisine, you eating Italian cuisine. In the evening, you do a big gala dinner to celebrate the award on African excellence and achievement. But on your plate there is French cuisine, there is Japanese cuisine. What is wrong? And then so they were like, okay, yeah, we never thought about that. They say, yeah, okay. So we as African chefs, we are here, okay, and I want to challenge you to give me the platform to shine on an African level. You understand? And that's how I started doing more and more this type of big event. When I was in Dubai at the African Food Hall, everybody that was coming there was like, oh wow, this is beautiful. We never knew about this type of cuisine. It's fantastic. It's so tasty. So and it was really amazing to see how all of a sudden the world is ready for African cuisine. But it's ready because there are chefs who took this this challenge on exposing the African cuisine. And yes, it was not easy, but we are getting there more and more, and it's getting more and more affordable. And when I say affordable, it's accessible rather. Now you can go in any African big city and start finding a great level of comfort of African restaurant that have, like fine dining, or if it's not too fine dining, but something which is elaborate. We don't only have African restaurant where, it's your, I would say 2-star or 1-star type of restaurant. Now you have really fine dining setup or high-end setup that are serving African food.
I mean, even when you say that, I don't know very much about this whole Michelin star. I know that it's a big deal in the culinary world.
Yeah.
I just wonder how that works, and if there are any African restaurants or chefs that have a Michelin star, and does that also speak to the fact that we really need to be more present in those spaces, or create a platform and a space for ourselves in that kind of way?
So the debate with the Michelin star system, it's really, I would say, it's very sad. I think they don't value, it's as simple as that, they don't value African cuisine, or they don't know African cuisine. Therefore, because they don't know and African cuisine don't go to them, they don't really see it as something that can be to that level. Okay? There are African chefs who have Michelin star, but unfortunately they don't do African cuisine. So it's not about the talent. Wow. Talent is there, but it's about the food genre. You understand? It's about the food genre. That's why I really think it's time that the Michelin star concept start coming to Africa and be interested in Africa. Even, let's say, in places like Cape Town, for example, or in the vineyard, you can find restaurants that are even higher than some Michelin, 1-star Michelin restaurant in France or in Europe or United States, but they don't value anything that's happening in Africa. I'm not a big fan of that star system, but well, let's hope one day they will realize that Africa is a great place, and they will start awarding Michelin star to some African restaurants. I really hope so, and I hope it happens sooner rather than later.
Maybe one day, we could get into a position where people are actually experiencing Africa globally through the food. What do you think the forecast is for? How far do you think we are from that?
I don't see it as in that on that angle of how far are we from whatever. Same way, I don't see myself as how far am I for achieving something big. I am where I am, okay, and African cuisine is where it is now. Let's just go forward. Let's just move forward, okay. Let's move in direction of the goal,
Yes.
which is to have African food shown in all the platform possible and in all continent possible, okay, rather than thinking, oh, we are too far and whatever, we will never see this, and it can be sometimes you can be discouraged by the place you have to go, okay, and you don't even start going there because you realize it's too far. If you don't do the first step, you're never gonna get anywhere.
It's enjoying the journey.
Exactly. Let's enjoy the journey and focus on the destination rather than all the obstacles that are there.
But we'll overcome one bite at a time.
Absolutely, exactly. One bite at a time. I love that.
Chef Coco, before I let you go, I've got two things I want to speak to you about. Post-COVID, obviously a lot of people's lives changed. I want to know how it's impacted the restaurant business and how you've had to reshape, regroup, and how you feel that it's impacted the culinary world as a whole. And then secondly, to talk a little bit about IRENA and what that is about when it comes to food and sustainability.
IRENA is the International Renewable Energy Agency, where we did something together in Dubai at the expo, where I cooked for them an African menu showcasing how we could make sure that in Africa we all have access to clean and cheap energy, because that's also one of the challenge. It was also, how can I start working with the SDG that were, which is one of the biggest goal of the IRENA. It's a cheap energy, zero hunger, and something like that. We did a menu with them, and we're trying to see how we can now make sure we go into remote areas, okay, where we can start slowly teach people how we can start using renewable energy rather than than fossil energy, or that rather than, how can I say, coal or something like that.
I
Yeah.
love that. And now to wrap the conversation up, if somebody asks you, what is Africa's best kept secret, what would you say?
Every little secret of Africa have to be known, and it's about time, and put everything where it belongs. When you eat, or when I eat African food, and when I go in places and I eat local, okay, you really, I think us as African, if there is something that we excel in, it's that what you can call the Ubuntu philosophy, which is sharing. You can really feel that in all our different cuisine. Okay, like someone at the expo told me, what is the special ingredient that we put in our food. I said the special ingredient that African food have, it's really that Ubuntu and sharing philosophy that we put in our food as well. So that for me, it's really what makes the African food different to any other food.
Definitely. Chef Coco, this conversation has been fantastic. I honestly, I love your work. I love the way that you talk about African food. I love your passion for Africa and how that's translated in everything that you do. I know that not too long from now, many people are going to be around the world. They'll know more about African food because of chefs like you and people who really are going out there and dominating in spaces globally and sharing stories and sharing our food through stories in the most awesome ways. I think one of the things that I love the most about who you are as a person and about your restaurant and just all of the work that you've done is that you're doing something in terms of uniting Africa. And we know that that is one of the biggest things that we need to do. You're uniting Africa through different plates of food. So that is fantastic. Your legacy is incredible already. Thank you so much, Chef Coco, for spending time with us.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to express my passion about African cuisine and about African continent. And you must also understand that what you are doing is as great as and as important as what we are doing, because you are the one who also are giving us the platform and the possibility to talk about our passion and share our passion. And only by doing that, we can be able to be seen and be heard. And maybe there is a one or two, three person that we're going to touch, and then he's going to tell other friend, oh, have you heard this? And then another one gonna talk about it. That's the only way we all now become one big, how can I say, entity, and being proud of about how we are, what we are. So thank you very much as well.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as my team and I enjoyed putting it together for you. Remember, if you want to find out anything about me, your host, Lee Kasumba, about my team members, about the guests that we've had on the podcast, please go to theafricawhisperer.com. And don't forget to follow me across all social media platforms. That's Lee Kasumba. Thank you. Catch you on the next one. That's all that we have time for in this episode of The Africa Whisperer. Thank you so much for your time and for listening. I hope that you do share this with all your networks. And I hope that more than anything that you leave inspired and realizing what is truly possible when you put your heart and mind to it. Please be sure to go to www.theafricawhisperer.com. Also, it's Lee Kasumba on all social media platforms. We look forward to the next episode. Thank you so much. Don't forget to rate and review and to share this link with all your friends.